Okay.
Uh, so today is June 8th, 2025, and I'm here doing an interview with a great teacher and mentor of mine, RJ Wellington. And I'm really looking forward to this. So thank you for this opportunity to talk. And we're going to talk about masculinity.
Okay. Thank you for having
Well,
me and choosing me to be your first guest.
yeah, absolutely. You're the first one I thought of. So very, very much appreciate it. And we'll get started with just in your own words, kind of a little more condensed version of your your biography, your life, and just to give people an idea where you're coming from as we move through the interview with your answers and whatnot.
Right. And I will promise I will be very quick because I could spend the days talking just about my life experience. But bottom line is, since I was a very young child, and I'm talking before even my teens, I was always I had this type of questioning. Okay, I always had that thirst for knowledge that I couldn't explain where it came from. It didn't come from my parents or my grandparents, for sure. You know that feeling like that is something that is not right in reality. Right? I think most of us in this path have had that feeling one way or another. And as an example, I was raised in a evangelical Christian family, basically my grandparents who raised me most of the time. And I since the very beginning, I took the Bible in a different way. In the sense, as an example, I read that phrase by Yeshua, those who believe in me will do the things that I do, and even greater things. Then I look around at the church. I didn't see anybody turning water into wine. I didn't see anybody really healing others. I didn't see people walking over water, much less resurrecting the dead, right? So I said, there is something wrong. Either our master was lying or people don't believe enough, right? So, those type of questions from what I thought I was somehow crazy or different. Maybe if it was today, they would call me an autist or something like those labels that psychiatry give to different children, right? Which in most in cases enlighten children somehow. So that set up I would say a set of events. I started getting information. For example, I was in my early teens, I started getting books about the power of mind. And when I say getting, I didn't look for them. I was in a school library, for example, and I bumped into books on those subjects, on extraterrestrials, and it sounded so natural to me. And what I noticed as well, up to this day, every information that comes to me seems to be at a higher level of development. So they came in order, right? From my very early things to now. So that's basically where I come from. Now let's fast forward again. I don't want to talk for hours on about this or even for several minutes. I think the water divider in my life was in 1994. I was in the same apartment. I was in my early 20s. And I decided to go to my bathroom. I've been here for over 30 years in the same apartment. So I decided to take a nap after lunch. And I didn't have any intention to meditate or to do any spiritual practice. I myself, I don't like meditating because I think it's not necessary for me, for myself. It is for others. But then I lie down in my bed trying to take a nap, and suddenly I had that experience that I can only say being everything, everywhere, all the time. Or you can call it omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, which to me I boil down to experiencing cosmic consciousness. I don't know if that experience took a few seconds or a few minutes because I didn't have a clock with me and I wouldn't care to look at it if I had. But I would say that in that small time I experienced all. And I'm talking about all, right? And the most important feeling that for me was that sense of profound peace and what the Indians call bliss. Okay, so there, and I tell you, Andrew, once you have this type of experience, you never come back the same. Okay, it's like something like you have a mark on you, and that accelerated my progress, my growth, and later on I came to realize that what I had in childhood is because I was born with more memory, right? And it's not a matter of being better than anyone. We all have the memory of, I would say parallel lifetimes. I don't call past lives or future. They all parallel, right, in different dimensions. But I had that experience, and that changed my life. And I most of what I share with you guys came after that experience. And today, I share what I know just out of the joy that I have of sharing, of doing what I do, and the rest is history. So I I think I was short enough, but that is my very quick background.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And that experience that you brought up, that reminds me of the book Autobiography of a Yogi, where Yogananda, I believe, if I remember right, his guru Yukteswar taps his heart or something like that. I don't know if that's exact, but yeah, and it gives him kind of a cosmic conscious
Yeah,
experience. So,
yeah, and I don't know if
and that
there is any association. Sorry, but I read the autobiography of a yogi before this experience, not right before, but before having that experience. I don't know how many years prior. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that was immediately the first thing I thought of, and I know that for a lot of people that's kind of the goal of their practice. They want that um kind of out of body expansive experience and
yeah. But I tell
yeah.
you, that experience is not a state to be in all the time. Okay, it's just a glimpse of who, instead of saying who you really are, what infinite consciousness of which we are part is, right? So I remember, I think in the book, The Power of Now, I think this guy Eckhart Tolle, he said that there was a point that he couldn't function in society for a while, a short while, because he was so into that state. So it's not a practical state unless you live in a cave in the Himalayas, right? But yeah, that's what I want to mention. It's not
Yeah.
something, it's something that everybody will experience, be it now or 100, 1,000 years from now, because this is who we truly are. But it's not in the physical 3D dimensionality. We have this headset to filter, right, things. And I think it's part of our evolution is to go back into the possibility of accessing those states when we need, but not to be in that state constantly. Otherwise, you won't be able to operate in the quote unquote real world, right?
Yeah, and that reminds me, I'm a little fuzzy on my autobiography of Yogi because it's been a while since I listened to the audiobook or read it. But I think after that cosmic conscious experience that he had, I'm pretty sure his guru was like, okay, now it's time to go sweep the ashram, like get the broom and sweep the ashram, just to make the point that it's like, yeah, this is a special thing, but you have to, like you have your earthly duties kind of, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
staying grounded.
yeah, yeah. No, because in the yogic tradition, they have this discipline also of service, right? So you might see a highly advanced guru washing somebody else's feet or cleaning the floor. Yes.
Yeah, and then it also reminded me of um I believe Shiva actually.
Mm,
His eyes are always half closed because, the one half is in the infinite, the other is here in
yeah.
the planetary.
Right.
So anyway, we'll move to our first question here. Thank you for that background. Throughout your life, who have been your most influential role models and why?
Well, I have to say that my real, the one I say real because I lived with him most of my childhood and early teens, was my maternal grandfather. Okay, I could say that he was my first master, not in the sense of metaphysically speaking, but in the sense of being an example of a man of integrity, a man of family values who took care of his children, his grandchildren, and his up to his great grandchildren. And I never saw my grandfather in a negative state, believe it or not. I swear to
Wow.
you. He was always that type of, everything is going to be all right. I never saw him cursing or angry at someone. He lived his life. It was a simple life, but he was financially well. He was a tailor. So, and back then, a tailor would make a good living in the 50s, 60s, when people, even in America, seeing it, everybody had their business suite, right? Even
Yeah.
if they were not going to work. So he made a good life. He left my grandmother well provided when he passed. And so, he was an example of what being my first example of being a true male figure who cares for his family and for his community. He was very active in church as well. So he was the first example of what it is to be functioning human being giving service to others as well. Yeah. And then later, of course, I had many influences. And ironically, my biggest influences in metaphysics was the early New Thought teachers like Neville, Joseph Murphy, and many others, Walter Silenium, that many people don't even know. Because I tell you, the books written in the late 1800s and early 1900s are better than most books that you can find now that are written,
Yeah.
this year or last year, because these people are just, to me, repeating. Because as I always tell you guys, the truth is the truth. You cannot create another truth, but there are ways of presenting that truth. And those early, I would say, pioneers, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have AI to write a fake book that they say they author. So they went through personal experiences, right? So they had to do it sometimes without help. Not everybody went to India or to Tibet and had a master. They got a lot of intuitive information. So those are my external role models of what being, a true individual. In this case, we're talking about masculinity, right? Is yeah,
Yeah. And that's awesome with your grandfather. I can kind of relate with that. My grandfather is very much the same way.
good.
I I'm sure I probably have seen him in a negative state, but not often at all. So
Yeah,
that's interesting there.
yeah. And when I say negative state, I won't say that my grandfather never got was sad or sometimes disappointed, but I mean that negative state that you express, negative emotions and scream at someone or fight someone. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Right, right. And on the topic of masculinity, especially with Neville, I think I guess I can't say I've gotten too deep into Joseph Murphy, but what a radiant example of being a trailblazer, and truly being guided by
Yeah.
having his own internal guidance
Yeah.
moving him through the world, which I think is a really big piece of the masculine path. I mean, not just masculine, but especially for the masculine, having
Right.
our own sense of direction and
Yes.
moving from that.
Well, and actually, Joseph Murphy is not as deep as Neville, but he also learned from Abdullah, Neville's teacher, according to history. Joseph Murphy was exposed to Abdullah, that mysterious Ethiopian black Kabbalist who initiated Neville. Yeah.
Very powerful. Yeah, I don't know a lot about Abdullah either, but I think it's very mysterious and interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, Abdullah was that type of a guy, according to one of Neville's writings and recordings. Neville speaking live. Abdullah was like, for example, Neville, his initiation was like that. He didn't know anything about Abdullah because you can have a ascended master living beside you and you never know. So I think they were roommates. And one day Neville say, I want to go to Barbados, his country, but I don't have the money, I don't have the means. I would like to spend the end of the year there. And Abdullah just said, think of the end. You are in Barbados. And there starts the whole. We will then also spend a few hours talking just about Neville's experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I get a very Neo Morpheus relationship going with Neville and Abdullah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
yeah,
we're going to talk about the archetypes here. Morpheus is the archetype of a master, right? And the
mhm,
ultimate level is that all these masters are archetypes of our higher self. Because a true master will always say, look inside. The true master is inside you. Yeah.
mhm. Great. So moving to our next question, what are your thoughts on the current state of masculinity, and what are your thoughts on the future of masculinity? I
Uh,
guess we'll start with the current state now, but
okay, well, that is a very complex and good question. So I want you and your audience to realize that I'm talking from my perspective, okay? I'm not the owner of the truth. I'm far from knowing everything in this state of consciousness. And what I say here is from my point of view. And I don't want to divert from the topic, but what I want to say is this: we cannot talk about masculinity or to have a full holistic view without including femininity in the equation. And you will hopefully you understand why. Because the one without the other is incomplete. Okay, so now they state right now. I think I'm not the first one to say, and I won't be the last one to say, that we live in a controlled matrix, right? Controlled by a group of people, the so-called cabal, okay? And we have some local, I would say, cultural, social standards that were created by this matrix cabal. But we also have universal, I would say, archetypal standards. So we must differentiate one from the other. And that's what I will try to do here. Okay, so for example, local, cultural. There are cultures that treat women as inferior, right? I live in New York and I have seen with my own eyes. This is the real melting pot of the planet. People from all over the world, all cultures, and I have seen people from I think it's a specific Hindu sect in which the woman has to walk behind the man. She cannot walk by his side. All right. I have also seen with my own eyes, especially in the subways, some women from some Muslim traditions, not all of them. They use what they call the burqa. It's something that they cover the whole body. You might have seen that in movies or pictures, right? So they can show only the eyes. There was even controversies. Maybe you heard a few years ago. Some of them didn't want to take the burqa to take a picture for an ID. So how come, right?
oh,
So I'm giving you examples of this. I would say fake standards and expectations from both sides, men and women. Okay, and for that, I even create a bullet point here, not to go everywhere about this question. We know that this cabal has an agenda, and I will ask you, what you think is the primary directive of this cabal? The top one, the primary. It's not a matter of being right or wrong. Maybe you don't know, maybe you don't remember, because I think we talked about this before. But the primary directive of the cabal, what do you think it would be?
I would say to disconnect people from their divinity.
It is one level of that, and you're right, but if you put in the words that they use is divide and conquer, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
dividing you from your infinity is also a way. But we're talking about gender rules here. So let's apply to that the strategy that they use. And, again, it comes from me, but anybody can check it by themselves and look at reality around us, or what we call reality, right? So one way they go about this dividing and conquering is to make men feel superior and women feel inferior at some level, or vice versa, right?
Mhm.
Depending on, again, on the culture. Another strategy is setting these specific invented rules for each gender. So a man has to be like this and a woman has to be like that. Yes, to me, a man has to be a man and a woman must be a woman, right? But they set rules that sometimes are hard to keep up with, or that brings down one or the other side. Am I clear so far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, and we are seeing this today. They make men now feeling ashamed of your masculinity, right? Of their masculinity. So we are seeing now in this ridiculous woke movement, right? They are criticizing men for being men, right? So
Right.
that, to me, the only word I have for this is ridiculous. And the people who buy into that BS, I'm sorry, but I have to call them ridiculous as well. Okay, said then they make men ashamed of being truly masculine. And they also, in the divide and conquer topic, still, they make women revolt against men somehow. Oh, that is unfair. We want to change this. We want to also, and I agree totally. We shouldn't discriminate any gender for a type of a profession, but I don't also don't agree that you should put for example, a man who became, in his conception, a woman playing sports with other women, right? So, just an example of this nonsense that is going on right now. Okay, they confuse gender identity basically to destruct the family structure. All right. So one thing
Yeah.
that we see nowadays in America, it's happening now, and has been happening a lot since the 60s or the 70s, especially in minority communities, many children being raised without a male figure, right? At the beginning, I told you my great male figure was my grandfather, right? But imagine a kid now with a single mother and the father is usually not present. Some parents, fathers, unfortunately, are in jail. And what can this child expect, right? Okay, and part of this confusion includes what we see happening in grade schools. Children who are 4, 5, 6 years old being exposed to some books that are not appropriated for them, right? We have
Oh
examples
yeah.
and parents trying to fight that nonsense, okay? Because children before, especially before 7, they are easily programmable, okay?
Mhm.
But some types of programming can cause more harm than good. And I think we are at a point that we never saw so many young kids, both genders, committing suicide or being depressed, right? So that's all part of the package, okay? And as if that wasn't enough, what they do as well, they engineer food to alter our hormone balances. Okay, and this is
Yeah.
also a fact. Anybody can check it. There are chemicals put in food here that in Europe they are totally banned, right? Starting with those colorful cereals they feed the children here, right? So that mess up with the hormones, and as you might have been hearing from Ramta, right? Our body was made to live off our glands, not necessarily our organs. If our glands are working well, which are associated with the chakras, right? So they disturb that balance. So they cause this, I would say, gender confusion somehow. Okay, I also is also another fact that you might have heard that most males in America have a low testosterone count nowadays. Have you
Yeah.
heard that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's been I want to say it's been decreasing 1% each year.
Exactly. So that is a reason.
Something like that.
That is a reason for that. That is involution instead of evolution. So there are some forces wanting the male archetypal to be weaker somehow. Okay,
Mhm.
and finally, in these strategies, what are they doing now? Oh, I mean, they were doing until a while ago. This woke movement. They cancel those who have a conservative or natural point of view. So when I say conservative, I'm not saying a white American male who is a Christian, who goes to church, who is a, whatever it is. Some people call neo-Nazi, right? I'm not saying
Yeah.
conservative in that way. Being conservative is looking at a tree and say that is a tree. That a tree is not a cat. That a tree is not a butterfly. Right? I mean conservative in terms of having common sense. But
Yeah.
now many people are canceled by looking, hey, the emperor is naked, for God's sake. Well, the person is usually canceled, and most people fear to be canceled from social networks, to have their podcast or whatever being canceled, people not watching anymore, right? So, and these are the strategies. Any question about this? Well, there are some of the strategies, all right, for this primary this prime directive of divide and conquer. Okay, talking
Mhm.
about gender rules and all the issues that are going on, especially, or not especially, but with males, since our topic here is masculinity.
Absolutely. I think well, a couple things came to mind as you were talking, and the first one is, the words united we stand, divided we fall. So, of course, that is the strategy, divide and conquer, and especially when it comes to men and women, I think um, if you look into Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, one thing he mentions is having the right woman is pretty much like the supercharger for success for men and things like that. So I think it comes back around to um, actually a metaphysical principle
Oh, yeah.
which they use in music, harmony,
Yeah.
harmonizing, rather than disharmony, where the things don't
Mhm.
work together.
Yeah.
When they work together, it's more expansive and
Yeah.
useful. When they don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and very
So that was
soon,
the first thing.
yeah, very soon I will prove you here that this is a universal principle. The archetypes, yes. Okay.
Hmm. The
So
other thing that
I still have some
I
points
was
here before the next question.
okay.
And I want to emphasize that by saying this, that I'm not criticizing any, I would say, sexual, affective, preference, because I believe everybody has the free will to decide what they do. We should not judge anybody, but respect their divinity. Okay, so this is not about, has nothing to do with sexual preference that always existed in this planet, right? But in reality, this thing about the masculine and feminine, they are. Um, they are not opposites, they are complementary. Look at the yin yang symbol, right? So they complement each other, okay? and each one is equally important at this level. But so in our three-dimensional configuration, both genders are needed to create life. So you see how important this complementation is, right? A man alone cannot create a new life, and a woman alone also cannot create a new life. Okay? And besides create a new life, the ideal model would be both raising a family, contributing to the community, whatever you want to call. And what is the primal archetype? Okay, let's talk from a Western point of view. Adam and Eve, right? They are the primal archetypes. Now you're talking about, this author, Napoleon Hill, right? He spoke about this importance. You see in the movie The Matrix, right? There is Neo and Trinity, and together they are able to break free from the Matrix. So originally, in the highest level, there is no, I would say, gender division, okay? But when we subdivide, or when infinite consciousness subdivides, first that is at the level of a higher self, which is still gender free, because the higher self is overviewing infinite parallel lives of yours at this point, which subdivide, then we come to the three-dimensional concept of gender. So right now, for example, some people may not like, but you might be living a parallel life, or what some people call a past life, as a woman somewhere. A woman can be living a parallel lifetime as a man. Okay, I don't think that concept is too hard because many people talk about this. Okay, now the point here, men should not suppress the, I would say, passive side, and women should not suppress the active side, which means emotions, empathy, creativity, intuition are seen more like a female or female characteristics, right? And
Right.
logic, reason, courage, decision, logical thinking is seen more like male characteristics. But both gender has all of these characteristics. So men can be intuitive, can be delicate in the sense of liking arts without becoming effeminated, if you will. You know what I'm getting, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
100%.
think about the two hemispheres of the brain, right? That is the left and right. One is more intuitive, one is more logical. So what you say is, and that's why I say archetype, because I can prove it to you that this happens in all levels of reality. You see, the atom has protons and electrons. If there were no electrons, the so-called negative charge, the universe, the physical universe wouldn't exist, and vice versa, right? In the body, again, right and left hemispheres working together in harmony, you become the awakened man. In nature, we have what? Day and night, the sun and the moon, okay? And they all complement each other, right? So it's that point. That's what I mean by archetypal, principles of nature that we can use on different levels. Like to me, one of the most important universal principles is the law. Um, how do they call that? Well, as above, so correspondence. As above, so below, as below, so above. So you see, the fractal universe is an example of that, right? So my thoughts on this, as I said, we have been programmed, okay, or manipulated to follow some cultural archetypes that distort the true, I would say, essence of masculinity as well as femininity, right? And and they disturb this necessary balance again by destroying the family, by confusing children since they are very young, okay? And just to complete your question, as far as the future, From my perspective, we choose the future. They are out of infinite possibilities and probabilities. So we must start saying no to all this BS that I mentioned before, all these strategies, and just be ourselves. So our ancestors have survived the millions of years, or some people think only thousands. Doesn't matter. Without all this BS that we have now. And I think they were happier than most young people are now. What do you think?
Absolutely. And that kind of triggered something I've been thinking about recently, which is this idea that we have these archetypal, I don't know the right word to use, maybe just energies
Hmm.
would kind of be the most vague way to say it, but it's all encoded in our DNA. So we know what it is, both masculine and feminine, because it's all in our genes, it's all in our DNA, and finding, like you're mentioning, the right balance within ourselves of these different qualities of,
Yeah,
yeah, yin and yang, masculine and feminine.
yeah,
And I guess kind of we won't get into it now, but I'll just bring it up because you kind of brought it up. The awakened man,
yes,
and especially moving into the future, like you had mentioned, we created. I think it's really an integrated
yeah, yeah,
wholeness. Like
yeah,
these qualities, for example, creativity is very important, and that would be considered, if you're looking at it from that paradigm, more feminine,
yeah.
intuitive too.
Intuition, caring from for your offspring, right? Why can't a true man have all those characteristics, right?
And a really great example of this that I thought of is Donald Trump, President Trump, because the man has razor sharp instincts and intuition
Yep.
when it comes to decision making and things like that. I mean, he's had very masculine. He has all that going on too. But
Hmm.
I think, and he mentions it, and he's brought it up in videos and
Yeah.
I believe in his book, The Art of the Deal. It's like a gut feeling thing. That's intuition. So
Right, right. And you made a very good point about being imprinted in our DNA, right? These archetypes. So, for example, you don't see a dog trying to be a horse or a horse trying to be a cat. A cat is born with all that, I would say, cosmic blueprint of what a dog is, a cat, a tree, everything around you, by the way. And but so then, if you have that perfect imprinting, and not talking now just about gender, but about life in general, why we walk out of it or we suppress it? There must be an external cause, right? What I just told you, the strategies of the
yeah.
cabal to keep us from being who we truly are.
hmm and without going too much deeper down the rabbit hole, yeah, exactly what you mentioned. Programming kids from a young age because as Bruce Lipton's work teaches, our beliefs and thoughts affect our DNA and our gene expression.
Mhm.
So there's that confusion piece targeting the children. The food, I mean, there's no question the toxins in the food and the environment and whatnot that has an impact on our DNA. So I think it really does come down to that deeper level of the DNA, the genes.
Yes.
Um, But anyway, we'll keep moving forward. That's some great points you mentioned, and thank you for
Mm.
the divide and conquer and then breaking that down because it's
Yes.
I think a important part of it's not to get too sucked into the negativity of it, but recognizing, uh this has a reality to it and what can I do moving forward to
Yeah.
make the most of my life and help others.
And Jesus
So,
said, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, right? Because you can
right,
only be free from the illusion if you know that you are in an illusion.
exactly. So moving to our next question here. What are your top three most important qualities for men to succeed and thrive in these modern times we're living in?
Well, uh, I would say, first of all, you know that I operate from expanded consciousness, a temporal consciousness. So it's not even about modern times, it's throughout all time, right? Because
Yeah.
for a young person like you or someone who is in his teens right now, they are not in modern times, they are in the current time, right? So we call this time is modern, but based on what? So just to clear that out of the way, but the characteristics that came to me are the first one, the qualities. The first one that you know where I came from is to harmonize with the universal principles. Okay? And later on, I will show you that most successful people somehow, some way or another, use these principles. So harmonize with the universal principles. That doesn't mean being religious. That doesn't mean being spiritual. That doesn't mean going to an ashram or staying in Tibet for 10 years. I did all that without this, permission slips, as Bashar calls, right? So to me, what is harmonizing? Again, I was born with a memory somehow, for some reason. To me, one of the most important phrases in Christianity is seek you first the kingdom of God, and everything will be added to you, right? So there is a truth behind that. Okay? If you are illusorily disconnected from your essence, from who you truly are, no matter how much money you make in your life, you can still be miserable. And we know examples of that, right? So that's the first
Absolutely.
one. Okay? You can call the spiritual principle, but to me, it's a principle of life. The universe is not spiritual, the universe is the universe. Bottom line. The second one, which is becoming rare in most people these days due to all distraction, have discipline. We spoke, I think, about this in our last call, right? A group call. Have discipline. For God's sake, nobody ever reached any great goal without discipline. Do you think a world famous or a world champion tennis player or swimmer stays home most of the time watching reruns of, Friends and drinking beer and eating potato chips? No. What they do, they spend most of their lives in the training ground. That's how they achieve. They are not better than you or me. They just did it to the extreme in a positive sense, right? So, what is discipline? And people say, "Oh, I don't have the discipline." Yes, everybody has discipline. It is where you direct it. You must have a lot of discipline to spend hours on Instagram, on Facebook, exchanging BS with other people, right?
Mm.
That is discipline. You must have a lot of discipline to run out of your home 10 at the night, midnight, to rush to a drug dealer to buy your fix, right? So, what is so hard to understand about discipline? Okay, if I want to learn French, I started reading French, I started listening, I start, writing, I open a dictionary, and in a few months or a couple of years, I know French. Is that any major secret to success? Again, when I say conservative, natural laws, the way the universe works, right? I try to make things simple for people because even many self-help, motivational authors make it too complex, right? But it isn't. And we have the third characteristic, right? Or quality. And that also sounds strange for most people, which is service to others. So again, harmonizing with the universe, have the discipline, and work on service to others. Now, when I say service to others, some people might say, oh no, so I have to give of myself freely to help everybody without receiving. No, service to others include, and I think I can speak because you know me. Most people don't know. I can be saying a bunch of BS. But service to others in business, in the science of success, mean to me giving people more than they are expecting to get from your service, from your product, from whatever it is that you are selling. Makes sense?
Yeah,
So now,
makes sense.
how do I do that? You took the 12-week lessons with me. When you start your first lesson, did you ever realize that years later we will be having a monthly meeting totally free in which I give you more information than you can find in any book or any video whatsoever? Did you expect me to give you all this up to this point?
No, no, I didn't.
So that is an example of giving more than people expect. Let's say, and you don't have to go to that extreme. If you sell a product that you say is going to help you sleep better, make sure that the product will surprise the people in a way. You know what I mean, right? Whatever you are selling, whatever you are offering, surprise the people by giving, not that you are short selling you. You can sell a $5,000 product, but if they give people what they want and a little more, they will come back to you. They will recommend it. If someone asks you uh, for a metaphysical course or anything, who would you first recommend?
Oh, absolutely you.
Well,
100%.
because I
Yeah.
see this principle. So just to wrap up this, harmonize it with the universe, okay? Have discipline and service to others by always giving more than they are willing to expect. And that applies to social situations as well, right? If you have someone that you like, a friend or a girlfriend, surprise them. Be willing to give them more than other people give, because most people want to take from you. If they find someone who wants to give, and again, it's not sacrificing yourself, but being I would say better in the eyes of this disturbed society. Are we clear on these three uh,
Oh,
qualities?
absolutely. Yeah. All those are really good. And I'll just kind of put a little a piece in here. If you want to learn about the universe harmonizing with it, then the natural topic of that would be metaphysics, which is what Wellington teaches, and he has a YouTube channel. I'll link it in
Yeah.
the YouTube description
Yeah,
and whatnot.
the links to my YouTube and to my free book. Another
Yeah,
example
yeah. Oh yeah.
of giving more than people expect, because people think a free book, might not be worth anything. There is a catch there, but you read my book, right? What do you think?
Yeah. No, it's
Awakening from
amazing.
Within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll put those links in the description and highly recommend them, especially for that first quality because there there's a lot to unpack there, but Wellington his superpower is making it all simple. So,
Oh, well, and a last piece of advice on being successful. There also, I'm learning. I learn from experience and from seeing others, right? First of all, if you see any successful people, they use at least two of these principles that I share. If not, I most use the three of them. But another advice: if you work for someone else all your life, you will readily become wealthy. You will make them wealthy. Now, there are exceptions to this case. Let's say, Andrew, tomorrow someone calls you from Morgan Stanley and say, we are offering you a $5 million a year job. Then, of course, you are still working for someone, but that doesn't happen to everybody, right? Nobody gets that type of offer. So, what I mean, no matter if you have a business, I'm a physical therapist. I'm doing very well. I'm very happy with my job, my profession, and my salary. But I'm still thinking of ways of creating residual income through technology, through selling courses in the near future. I'm preparing versions to be sold. So people, I don't have time to, if I have 100 students, I cannot talk to them during a week, right? I don't have that number of hours. So, but what I mean is this: We all have something inside that we can turn into profit. Either your product or someone's product that you resell, your talents. Okay, if you are good in music, you can create an online class for playing the guitar. You know what I mean, right? So what I mean, even if you work, you have to work for someone else, as I do now. Think about eventually having a source of income that you are in control of, which means have your own business. No matter if it generates 100,000 a year or 2 million, but even 100,000 in your control, that money coming to you. Example, let's say, and these numbers I'm making up, okay? I will not reveal the real numbers. But if I'm getting paid $50 an hour as a physical therapist, my boss is getting paid for my work that I put my work 250. Why? They bill, let's say Medicare or any private insurance, $300 for a physical therapy session. And out of that 300, he pays me 50. Okay, I know he has his business expenses. And I thought I'm not criticizing my boss or any boss. He had the brilliancy to create his business, to create his agency, right? But you know my point, right? If you work for someone else, like in the sense, most Americans work for 30, 40 years in a company, in a manufacturer, and they retire with retirement income from Social Security. I don't think that is the future that most people want. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, and you hit on a really good point there, which I don't know if you've ever heard the book. It's called Ambition by Jim Rohn. He's
No.
he's like a really famous motivational speaker kind of guy. Like Tony Robb, he was actually one of Tony Robbins' mentors.
Okay.
But anyway, it's an incredible book. They have it on Audible, and one of his main qualities he mentions in that book is being self-enterprising. So it's exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this this circles to what I want to help men do, which is to uncover the hidden potential and talents that are dormant within themselves so they can
Yeah.
mobilize them into the world and
Yeah.
make create success with it, because we all have great things within, and a lot of them are sleeping within us, they're dormant. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, bringing forth these ideas and these talents, and going back to the quality you mentioned, service to others,
Yeah.
uh bring them all together.
Right.
It's yeah, it's the recipe for success.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Sure.
All right. Next question here. Oh, hold on. I got this list here. What are oh, I just did it again. Hold on. Any advice for guys who want a stronger connection to their masculinity and purpose?
Well, besides everything we spoke about, is stop buying the woke guilt generating programming of the matrix. Stop buying into the bullshit. Okay, be proud of yourself. Be proud of being a male. And I would give, if you were a woman interviewing me asking about the femininity, I would say the same on the other side, okay? So when I say be proud of being a male, I'm not implying that women shouldn't be proud as well. But that's what you know, because if you say a stronger connection, if you are born a man, you have that connection. Again, there are things illusorily separating you from that strong connection. So cut through that BS, then the connection is natural. Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I think a big one, at least I speaking from my own experience, and I'm sure there are people out there who had similar experience to me, is and I do think it comes back to the toxins and things like that. It's clarity of purpose. And it all kind of revolves around that, I think. And I'll just slip this in because you had brought it up recently. I don't know if it was on a call or what, but you had mentioned kind of a high level purpose, life purpose, not just an individual's life purpose,
Right.
but the purpose of life
Yeah.
is expansion.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's
And
yeah, that's the main purpose because uh again, seek you first the kingdom of God, right? So that's the main purpose of life is for us. The universe is in a constant state of evolution. But if you buy the BS from the cabal, you stop it, or you hold or you delay your evolution. So that's the big one. But there are maybe many purposes in your three-dimensional life, like having a good marriage, have a good family, raise my kids well, having my own business. Those are purposes at the fractal lower level, but they're not less important for your full joy, let's say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, just kind of wrapping up that question, I think a great point is just like you said, there's kind of like these higher purposes that guide our life, and then within, there are more and more. It is a fractal, and
Yeah.
just as a reference, it's a really well for me, really thinking about it, it's a great reference both for success and purpose.
Yeah.
Is this expanding me in a way that's positive and constructive that gives a good feeling like your body, your emotions, they know when something's right or wrong
Oh,
for you personally.
they do.
And
If you're not
so,
polluted by toxins. Yeah. Yeah. They
exactly.
do.
Yeah, so the expansion, that's a great question. Is this expanding me in the kind of way I want, or is it
Yeah.
contracting me? Just
Yeah. And another, if you want to apply to business, how can I expand this service or this product? How can I evolve this to a new level of effectiveness, of goodness, whatever it is that you
yeah.
sell, right? Yeah. So again,
Mhm.
as above, so below, as below, so above. If you understand these simple principles, everything is consciousness and the law of correspondence, you have gone halfway through, at least halfway through enlightenment, if you apply them, of course.
And that's the key to apply. That comes back to discipline.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could share just one habit, kind of more on the practical side, which would dramatically improve the quality of life for men watching this, what would it be?
One habit.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that I can think of is what we call resilience. You know what resilience means? According to the dictionary, is the ability to cope uh, with and recover from setbacks somehow. But it doesn't mean negative setbacks. Okay, I will give you an example. And before I also made a bullet point to give examples. I like real life examples of Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb, right? So I have three quotations from him here. First of all, he failed, according to legend, almost 3,000 times. Some people say 10,000, but according to the history, over 3,000 times he failed before he reached the right configuration to create a light bulb. And what he says, now I'm reading, a quote is from him. I have not failed. I have just found thousands of ways that don't work. How that sounds for someone, that is resiliency, right? Most people would give up in the 10th attempt, right? That's not what most people do in life. Another quote from him: many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up, in the same line. And finally, when you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this: you haven't. Because you can't exhaust all
That's
the
good.
possibilities unless you shoot yourself in the head and you die. All right. So this is the resilience. This is the habit that I talk about. And I'm not saying that everything will be difficult and you have to try 1,000 times to be successful. But for God's sake, Don't give up. What I tell my students, I give you amazing information, I give you some audios, some videos to watch. But if you listen to, for example, the meta declaration for 3 days, and you didn't win the lottery or start floating or levitating, most people stop listening, right? Maybe you should listen just a few more days to start making that work for you. Because I don't know why there is a universal principle of between 7 and 21 days for something to really sink in your consciousness and start
Yeah.
forming your reality or your new reality. But if you spend the next 7 days, 21 days, therefore the rest of your life, having the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same habits, what, what do you want out of your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think to drive that point home, I don't remember where I heard it, but um basically heard that for some people who maybe start a new supplement or something, they don't notice the effects. And some people just aren't going to know the effects ever.
Yeah,
But I think it takes like a minimum of 60 to 90 days for the supplement to really take its
yeah,
course in
oh
the
yeah,
body or whatever.
yeah,
And that's kind of the thinking I've kind of adopted for myself with anything. If I'm learning something new, I mean, I know the whole habit thing. Some people say, yeah, it's 21 days.
yeah.
I go more for like 2 or 3 months to really get something in there.
Yeah, but we give
But it's, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, we give it 21 days as a minimum, like me.
yeah.
Most of the
Hmm.
practices I share with you guys, I practice constantly. I didn't do
Yeah.
21 days and then stop. Whatever is working in my life, I will keep on doing to make it better.
Right. All right. That's great. And as a side note here, I've recently been certified as a heart math resiliency coach.
Oh, great.
So,
Congratulations.
and it's yeah, it's very true what you're saying. Resiliency kind of is the core of everything. And they use the metaphor of a battery. Like a person who's resilient, they have that extra energy to keep going, just like you're talking about.
Right, right.
And it's really recognizing what drains the battery and what charges it and
Yeah,
using energy well.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and another point
great
I
point.
think we touched before, it all depends on the framing in neurolinguistic terms, right? You can reframe things. The word failure. What is failure? You know,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
to me, in my vocabulary, there is no failure. In the universe, you don't see, a failed tree, a failed cat, a failed rock, a failed human being. There is no failure as we were indoctrinated to think to make ourselves feel low. If I try um, to play the guitar, I don't play as well as I think Brian May was the guitarist for Queen, my favorite group. You know, but did I fail? No, he practiced for 30 damn years to get there, right? So can I call
ooh,
myself a failure if I try 3 times and I didn't get to that level? No. If I just, as Thomas Edison said, if you just keep on doing, you get there. So resilience and discipline, basically, the complementary, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. And it really does come back around to talking about neurolinguistic programming. One of the presuppositions there is there's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
Exactly.
And it's a great way to think because I just got the image of like a tree here where I live. I'm sure you've seen it too. Someone builds like a railing and the trees growing underneath it and it
Oh,
just
yeah.
grows around the railing. You know,
Yeah.
it's having that flexibility to
It's
work with whatever's present and that I think that's just how nature works. It's like
Yeah.
it will create a new order
Hmm.
and make something new when it needs to.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah. No, you're right. Nature is a fractal of the universe. Nature doesn't fail. The universe doesn't fail. And if we are fractals of the universe as well, where is failure? But in our programmed mind, right?
mhm. Yeah, recognizing that it's a really important point here. So thanks for bringing that up.
Sure.
It's
Now,
everything can be used in an advantageous way
yeah,
to
yeah.
move forward and evolve. Okay. So we're to the last question, and then we'll kind of just have a little open to talk a little more after this. But do you have any book or movies recommendations where there's some good characters demonstrating peak masculinity?
Okay. Well, yes, I do, especially movies, because the books, I have read probably over 1,000 books, and I think any book, like books by Awaken the Giant Within and Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins, are classics, right? All books
Okay.
by
Hmm.
Neville Goddard. But as far as movies, I always like the archetype of the superhero since I was a child. You know, I used to buy the magazines of Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and later watching the movies. I'm talking about the original movies, not this woke BS nowadays that they put in some superheroes, being, transgender or whatever they call it, right? I mean, talking about the
Right.
original archetype of someone like Superman or Batman or Spider-Man. You see those characteristics together, right? They are strong, they have a sense of justice, but they also have the sensibility. Most of these superheroes have a woman counterpart, like Superman and Lois Lane, right? Like Spider-Man, I don't know his girlfriend's name, but
Mary Jane.
one of the Batman movies there was, I think, was Nicole Kidman that played Batman's, companionship. So yes, to me, the archetype of a superhero, because in reality, now I understand that I was so crazy about superhero stories when I was a child, because they show us our potential, right? I'm not saying that you have to go out and, getting the bad guys, but that potential of being expanded, of having superpowers, if you will. Yeah, so I
Hmm.
advise someone to watch the original Superman with Christopher Reeve, right? Was the actor, I think, of the original Superman series, the original Batman from the 90s and early 2000s. They are all very good examples of masculinity with imbalance with the other side as well. Yeah.
All right. All right. Awesome. Yeah, that's really good. Um, and yeah, I can relate to that too. Just thinking, I remember when I was, well, I was born in the 90s, so
Yeah.
when the first Harry Potter came out, I think I was like 4 or 5, and that I would just watch that on repeat, like because yeah, just like you're talking about, just these um the superhero ones too. Those came a little late, and
Yeah.
Star Wars as well, actually. But yeah, just these people who have these talents
Mm-hmm.
and like you're calling them the superpowers. It triggers something in us. I mean, for me, I can speak for myself. It definitely triggers something in myself of wow,
Yeah, yeah. And going back to the beginning, that is the power of an archetype.
hmm
Right? And that is the power of this produced negative archetypes they want to sell on young people today, right?
hmm
It produces
Yeah.
the same effect to the negative side. Because if you have an archetype, and again, with all respect, it's not them, the community, who's doing this, are manipulators. But I would say a transgender. You use it at the archetype to go to children at school ages, and you know what I mean, right? I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
criticizing
it's
the person who has the free will that I totally respect to be a transgender, but the
mhm.
system m- manipulated them themselves to play a role to bring society to a type of collapse. All right. So I want to make it that very clear because some people might listen to this and think that I'm homophobic. Well, you know me for years, right? I, you
Yeah.
know, in my life there is no space for any negative type because I believe that if you judge, you'll be judged in the same measure. But I'm talking about the cabal manipulating all genders, males, females, transgenders, gays, lesbians, to create that divide and conquer, I would say, state of mind. I hope I'm totally clear on that.
Yeah, yeah, you're clear, and I agree with you there because it's more of a it's a respect for an individual
Choice.
who's making choices for themselves, whereas children they're at a stage where they need to be led,
Hmm.
and some of those things can they I mean absolutely can be harmful to kids.
Yes. Yes.
So it's one of those things. Adults can choose for themselves, and there's definitely a push that can't be denied. There's a push for that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
you know, an
Yeah.
adult who chooses that,
Yeah.
they have free will. They can, it's not a judgment thing there. You're an adult. You can choose for yourself.
Of
A
course.
little 9-year-old getting a sex change,
No.
that's not right.
No,
That's not right.
and you see, statistics show that many people who have these operations, even in their teenage years, later on they regret, they go into deep
Oh yeah.
depression, and many of them commit suicide.
Hmm.
Okay, but now, also there, let's say I'm a 35 years old male, like that guy from the Kardashians, right? He decided to become a transgender. But he was mature enough, and I think he's happy with that, right? You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying, right? I'm not taking sides here. I'm not saying this is right and wrong because nothing in the universe that exists in this universe is wrong. They serve a purpose, whatever purpose is. You can call negative or positive. But if you're 30 years old male decides to become a transgender out of his own free will, go for it. Whatever makes you happy, right? So back to the
Right,
point.
right.
I'm not for transgenders being sent to schools where kids are 4, 5, and 6 years old and the books they are publishing, like, this little boy who wanted to be a girl. There is a time for that, maybe in the future. Again, we must have choices to choose from, right? Even in sexuality, in our emotional, affective life. Okay? I know some amazing metaphysicists who are gay. Am I going to stop listening to them because of that? No. But again, it's a matter of being mature enough, clear enough to make your choices from integrity, not being forced into a choice that is going to destroy your life eventually.
Right, right. And that brings up a great point because I think obviously not all. I mean, this is from an outside perspective, so I'm not talking from experience or anything like that, but I think a lot of kids who maybe go into, especially the transgender,
Mhm.
I think a lot of it's coming from negative states. They're maybe they don't fit in, that kind of thing. So we don't get too much into that, but
Yeah,
I think yeah, there's a light and dark just
yeah,
to everything in duality, and respect.
yeah. And that is
No need to judge any people who are
yeah, and that is the
full grown adults.
the so-called peer pressure. When I
Hmm.
was a kid, my level of peer pressure is, oh, this guy in school is smoking and many people are smoking. If I don't smoking, I'm left out, you know? So that's the psychology of peer pressure. But this,
Yeah.
there is some level that is acceptable between human beings because at this level we are competitive somehow. But again, I'm talking about a clear manipulation with negative intents of divide and conquer and destroy the human willpower so they can keep control for longer. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and just to kind of wrap that last piece up
Yeah,
all neatly for everyone, I think it comes down to people making an informed decision from a
yeah,
clear place with integrity
yeah,
and not being manipulated into doing it because that is the case. And we both know from our own experience individually and from what we've learned both metaphysically, hypnosis and NLP, that when we make choices from that state, they're going to be good choices. They're going to serve our life. Whereas if we make choices from a place of fear,
yeah.
they're probably not going to be good and healthy for us. So, real quick, actually, I thought about this earlier. I think during the first or second question, and I wanted to bring up sexuality with you. I know you're from Brazil originally, and so I know Brazilians, in my experience, they have a different a different way of living there, especially when it's
Mhm.
around sexuality and stuff like that. They're a lot more open and relaxed about it from my perspective.
Yeah,
Um, and coming back to what we were talking about before, that's one of the manipulations is sexualizing children. And
yeah.
I can speak from my own experience. I remember I was first exposed to porn when I was like 11 years old.
Mhm.
So and I think it can be very destructive. So what advice would you give for people who maybe are coming kind of out of the tail end of a childhood of being sexualized just from every direction and developing a healthy relationship to sexuality
Yeah,
that's positive and constructive and uplifting?
yeah. Well, even though some people call me a spiritual, whatever, which I don't call myself that, I'm very realistic. And again, look at nature. Both a boy and a girl at the puberty, they start having sexual impulses, right? But now it was suppressed somehow as well. Because I would say, I will put in words that are more politically correct, a boy pleasing himself or a girl pleasing herself. You know what I mean, right?
Hmm. Right.
What is wrong with that? That is a natural body function, okay? And if someone sometimes get, I would say, excitement of watching something porn. I'm not talking about addiction, those people who have to watch this every day for hours, but once in a while. What is wrong with that? Right? So it's a natural human instinct. Sex is what creates life, what creates the human being. So that's why I think the universe made is so smart that it made the sexual act being one of the best physical experiences you can have in life, right?
Hmm.
Now, your background, your parents, your religion are going to dictate how you perceive that. All right? Because some people think the worst feeling you can have is fear, but it's not. You know what it is?
But
Guilt.
guilt? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Guilt can be worse than fear. Okay? So, and why most religions make sex a taboo so they can control people, right? You are a sinner
Mhm.
because you are 12 years old, you are thinking about sex, which is a natural body process. It happens with animals, right? You had probably you had dogs. I have several cats, and we have to spay them, and because they are at home. I'm not totally
Mm.
for that, but we have to avoid the procreation, having 100 cats at home, right? But
Yeah.
when they are at certain age, a few months, they start having the so-called heat, right? Like
Mm.
humans have. So again, expanding your consciousness is not just being spiritual, like chanting on and eating only lettuce. It is again understanding nature and the manipulation to take us out of our nature. Again, everything in excess. If you are addicted to porn, you better take a look at yourself. If you are, and the biggest abomination, pedophilia, right? That is to me is an abomination, right? So I'm
Yeah.
not saying that that is right. I'm saying
No.
that the natural instinct of the human is to grow at puberty. And that's why I think in the Jewish tradition, they have the bar mitzvah. And some people marry very young because they know, the parents will not be able to control at some point that, basic instinct. So they marry very young. In my society, before my mother married, she was 17. She had me when she was 19, and she married legally with my father. My grandmother was the same thing. So before, some cultures used to allow people to marry young so they could fulfill, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
That
absolutely.
so, the advice I tell people, if you're not addicted to something that is an obsession, and if you're not thinking about having it with unappropriated ages, ask yourself, what makes me feel guilty about having sexual desires? That's the only thing I can say. What makes me feel guilty about being a human being? Right? Makes sense.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's very grounded way to see it.
Yeah.
I appreciate because yeah, it's one of those things I try not to get too polarized with something like that. It's easy to for porn just because there it can be a lot of darkness involved with it.
Oh yeah.
Um,
If you talk about the
but,
porn industry of the people being exploited, people being given
right,
drugs to do those scenes, I'm also again I'm against anything that violates your free will, anything that
right,
violates the golden rule. Now I might seem controversial, but if a man or a woman enjoy being a porn star, who am I to say you are wrong?
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and I think this
go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
that's why Jesus was somehow crucified, and I'm not comparing, okay? But imagine a adulterous woman in that society 2,000 years ago, with the whole village prepared to stone her to death. And he came into the middle of them and said, those who have no sin, cast the first stone. And
right.
everybody moved away. So if Yeshua gave that example, who are we to judge someone who is not violating anybody else's free will, who is not abusing or harming someone else, right?
Yeah, and so my takeaway from this is really it actually comes back to the last takeaway too. It's about being in a place where we can really know ourselves
Yeah.
and have clarity and congruence, integrity in what we're doing. So if you know yourself and this is right for me, this is wrong, it's pretty easy to feel it in your body. The
Exactly.
body it has those messages for us. So
Yeah.
is this right for me? Is this wrong for me? And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to something like that.
Yeah.
So
And again, as long as you are not harming anybody in the process, ask yourself, where does this guilt comes from?
right. All right. Well, that was kind of the last question I had. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, or any other ideas that have come up throughout the conversation?
Well, I think we have covered enough. And we can always have a second interview if you think about another topic that I might be useful to discuss. So now I usually like to make sure people understand the true science of life, which is metaphysics, which is what they call spirituality, because I don't like that term, but you know, it is not about the BS you were sold by religion, by some philosophies. It's about going back to your natural self. That is my approach, right? So all the taboo, all the restrictions, all these rules, you cannot eat this, you cannot do that. A couple of days I was discussing with a friend who grew up in Brazil. He's from Nigeria, and he's working the same place I am, and talking about what the prophets said and what was interpreted or manipulated or distorted after that. Like, I'm not a Christian in the common sense. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not evangelical. I'm a mystical Christian that study gnosis and study the true doctrine, if you will, of Yeshua. So, as I said in the very beginning, he said, those who believe in me will do the things that I do and even greater things. Another example, there are many fanatic Christian sects that alcohol is totally, prohibited. If you drink alcohol, you're committing a sin. Do you know what was the first miracle of Jesus?
Yeah,
Turning water into
water.
wine in a wedding to please, to make the participants happy. So if alcohol was a sin, the Son of God wouldn't have created. The universe wouldn't have created the alcohol in the first place, right? Another phrase from Yeshua, what defiles a man is not what enters his mouth, is what comes out. And there are some people who say, oh, you cannot eat pork, you cannot eat this, you cannot. So are we really understanding the messages from, and I'm talking about Jesus, you can put Buddha, you can put Muhammad, you can put anybody in the category of a master. Their words were distorted, right? To serve
Right.
some manipulative agenda. That's how I see religion as it is today, and even the spirituality movement. My book is called Awakening from the Dream. I think including the New Age BS. Because to me, New Age is a bunch of BS to begin with. Again, being natural. If you, as you heard, right, you've been listening to the Ramta audio. If you're a woman, be a woman. If you're a man, be a man. Simplicity. Okay? That, to me, the path to enlightenment is not to accumulate or to learn more. It's to clear away all the BS that you have been programmed into since you were born. So that's my take home message.
All right. Great. And for more information about you, in case anybody's interested, I'll put the YouTube in the description here,
Yeah,
or
I will send you
your
all.
YouTube link and your book as well. But
Yeah.
are you still doing the 12 weeks, or is that something people can look into, or?
I'm now in the process of upgrading the 12 weeks. You know, I'm expanding. So, and many
Yeah.
things that I share with you guys in our private group, right? In the inner circle, many things were not in the original 12 weeks. So, some of those things I have to include for this new level. So, at this point, I think I will be start seeing or working with the people privately, one to one, in probably 3 to 6 months. But I
Okay.
would strongly advise those who want to see. my philosophy, what I share, to download the free PDF of Awakening from the Dream. That is free. So if after reading that you decide to take a class with me, you are welcome. Okay, but again, I'm very open because I have a very good job as a physical therapist. So I think I can say what I can say, and I have the courage to say many things other people don't say because I don't live out of metaphysics. I don't live out of this. So I have no fear of being politically incorrect, right?
Right.
So that gives me a level of freedom. But if you want to experience this level, of expansion, and I think, Andrew, you had the 12 weeks with me. I think you are, the best person to say how it worked for you. And besides the 12 week, being part of my free inner circle throughout these years, you are the best, I would say, advertiser for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say, in fact, I was thinking, I was like, man, I should have said something probably at the beginning of the video, but highly recommend it. Um, that was, gosh, I'm not even sure now,
I think,
maybe 3 years or more,
yeah, yeah,
and
3 years. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I highly recommend all of it. His book, his 12-week program. For me, just like talking about the purpose of life and success. For me, this is my definition of success. Well, it's expansion. It's expansion, and the things I've learned with Wellington and continue to learn, by the way, it's very expanding, and I've studied a lot of traditions all over ever since I was a teenager as well, just like you, Wellington. I mean, and I don't think they all have their good qualities, but I feel like things you're teaching there, it's the least limited from my point of view.
yeah,
It's very open.
yeah.
There's not so much rules in place, and the thing is, everybody's different. So I just think it's easier to personalize and for whatever path the person takes.
Yes,
It's very personal.
yeah,
So highly recommended.
yeah. And one thing, thank you. And one thing that I have to remind, or not to remind, but to tell people that I'm probably the only, I would say, teacher. I don't like to give myself labels, but I have to. The only person in this movement that do not charge in advance. And Andrew is an example of that. He is a witness of that. Let's say you have your first session. After that session, I send you a PayPal link. If you didn't like, you never pay me 1 cent, and I will not run after you, I promise. So it's like this, right, Andrew? Each session, I bill you after that session. If you don't like, you can stop at any time, no pressure. And after you finish the program, I assign you to one inner circle based on your frequency, like Andrew is one of. And while I'm alive, I plan to do a monthly meeting, totally free. You never have to pay me. If I'm releasing the new transformational dynamics program in a few months, and they, like Andrew and all my students, will have that for free. So, I'm not after residual income from anybody. I just, again, I do this out of the pleasure of sharing. Okay?
Yeah, and I will say too, I wanted to highlight this before we wrap this up. That is one reason I wanted to do this call with you, Wellington, is because you have such and I don't think it's purely masculine. There's the feminine comes into it too, but you focus yourself, you create things, and then you share it.
Yeah,
There's like a completion to that
yeah,
process, and for you it's a cycle. You keep doing it, you're very consistent. That's an important trait.
yeah,
You're very creative, you bring it and let it channel, you pretty much channel it, and then you produce it and share it. So there's just a great lesson in there I think everybody can learn from, of
Mhm. Yeah.
letting things come out. You have these dormant ideas and
Hmm.
abilities, and then using it and being of service to the world.
Yeah.
That's in a nutshell. So
Yeah.
I thought of that and was like, man, you're the perfect person to do this interview with.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Wellington. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Okay.
I'll give this a try here.